Hey Mandakini, great to see you today. I was just wondering because I've been doing a little bit of reading up about omega-3s, and I was just wondering, could you explain to me some of the benefits of Manatex omega-3s? Because I'm quite confused. There's so many different ones out there ranging in all different prices, and I'm just wondering what would be the best one for me to take, and why should I choose Manatex one perhaps?
That is a great question, Kyna, because I find that a lot of people are actually by now educated about how important omega-3s are. So people know, so basically omega-3 are essential fatty acids that are building blocks in the body that are important to lots of functions, to things like brain health, gut health, the lining of the gut, immune system, brain health, eye health, heart health, joint health. They help with inflammation. So there is a lot of important needs in the body for omega-3 and the essential fatty acids. The thing is that a lot of people are actually deficient in omega-3. Right. And so people know that generally the omegas are important, but they don't differentiate between the different omegas, and they don't understand the difference between the different brands or the different products and the different pricing. Why is one more expensive than the other?
Sure. Okay.
So I
noticed that Manatex one only has omega-3. Do I not need a supplement that also has omega-6 and 9 as well?
Great question. You've got all the good questions. So it's true, there's a lot of companies that sell omega-3, 6, and 9. So it turns out that in our diet, and because of our diet has become more and more processed, more and more animal farmed and things like that, that our ratio of omega-6, so it's all about the ratio between the omega-3 and omega-6 that we have. We need a certain ratio. Yes. But what has happened in our diet is that we're getting so much more omega-6. We're getting between 10 to 30 times what we need. Right. And too much omega-6 has problems to it as well. Yeah. It can lead to, drain the body from omega-3. Right. It can lead to increased inflammation. It can lead to things like hormonal imbalance in women. So there's a lot of sources of omega-6. We don't need to supplement. Sure. Give you an example, even the sources, we used to get the source out of fish, for example. Once the fish is farmed and they get grained, they turn into omega-6. Even people that eat animal products like beef or meat, if it's grass-fed, it will have omega-3. But if it's grain-fed, it changes the structure and it's omega-6. And also sources of, margarines and plant-based fat, a lot of them can lead to a lot of omega-6, and we don't need all of that. Yeah. What we need is more omega-3. Okay. That's why, and apparently omega-9 is not actually essential, and we are getting it in things like olive oil and things like that. So what we do need a lot of, and there've been studies that show that tested people's level of omega-3, about 70% of people that were tested were deficient in omega-3. That's why Manatex has just put omega-3 in their product.
Perfect. Well, I can understand why that's so important now. Thanks for answering that. The other question I was curious about is, I know there's a lot of you hear all these stories about toxicity in the oceans and lots of plastics and things like that. How does the omega supplement maintain its purity? How does that work?
That is such a good question. There's a few ways that happens. First of all, the omega that Manatex puts in the product is made out of anchovies. Anchovies are little fish. Yeah. And normally more toxicity comes in fish with bigger bodies and more layers of fat. So there's more room for the toxicity. Also, it goes through a process of what's called molecular distillation, where the product is clean, where the oil is clean. Right. However, it's important to know that how it gets distilled is really important. And Manatex uses a process, an enzyme, to break it down, because in the process of distillation of the oil, a lot of other companies, most of our competitors, will use heat. Right. And heat damages the omega-3, and you don't get that. And sometimes they'll put other substances to help break it down, just so it can go through the machinery. So with Manotick 1, it's good to know that Manotick uses an enzyme, and it doesn't use the heat, so that way the omega is really, really effective. It's in its
makes it quite clean then.
Exactly, very clean. Perfect. So the name of the game when it comes to omega, because you can find omega in all ranges of price and in all ranges of purity. It's a little bit like going to the petrol station, and you can get fuel in every octane. Yeah. And purity costs you more money. Sure. It's not that we're drinking petrol. Please don't take that out of the talk. It's just that when there is purity involved, there's different layers. Yeah. So it turns out that Manotick Sources has an agreement with a company called EPAX, that produces oils for different companies and different levels of purity. But their most pure product, their most pure source, Manotick has an exclusive agreement. And it turns out that this company is the company that has the highest amount of purity studies, highest amount of studies of impact of omegas on humans. So and not only that, in 2012, they were awarded a special recognition. They were awarded a special award in 2012, and that was on the source that Manotick uses for their omega-3. And apparently Manotick has an exclusive agreement. So the only product that award-winning oil goes into our Manotick's omega-3. Wow. So to get the purest oil omega-3 in the world has to be through this product. If we haven't shown you yet, through this product. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting, because I know sometimes if you bought, like a bit cheap and nasty sort of oils, you open the lid and the smell is really rank and a bit yucky, smelling like too fishy, and sometimes that repeats on you. Whereas when you open that Manotick's omegas, I did notice it doesn't have that yucky,
fishy, has a lemon flavor, because they've added lemon, so it doesn't repeat on you. One of the things that doesn't repeat on you, and the cheaper ones, they've been using heat. They won't have the level of purity. They may have the toxicity from the ocean that you spoke about.
And it's not so, like, their capsules aren't so clear. That's another thing I have noticed. Right. Like Manotick's one's it's like so crystal clear. So that explains the purity that you were just talking about.
Yeah. I wanted to share something else that a lot of times it comes up. The big question comes about, why isn't Manotick using krill oil, and is krill oil better? Yeah. So krill are like little miniature crustaceans really in the ocean that can be used. A lot of companies use them to produce omega-3. There's a few reasons why Manotick has chosen not to use krill oil. First of all, krill is not allowed in many religions. There are a lot of religions that exclude these kind of crustaceans out of their diet, and the fish is inclusive. So by having the anchovies, you will get, more people can use it. It's allowed in more religions. Yes. Not only that, anchovies are much, much higher in oil. They're just dripping with oil. So they don't need to use as many fish to produce that. And a certain little point is that krill is the food of whales. And if we use it, whales are not going to have their food. There's reserves that are just declining. So in terms of sustainability, anchovies are much better, because they are in abundance, and they're not, we're not losing them. They're not going into extinction anytime soon. Excellent. So using anchovies is a much more sustainable way to go.
Great. Okay, well, that's an interesting side note. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Perfect. And the other thing I wondered is why, what's the benefit of the vitamin D being in the product as well? Like what benefits is vitamin D for me?
Great question. Now, a lot of people are also deficient in vitamin D. Even people that are out in the sun are deficient in vitamin D.
Yes.
And because vitamin D is also a fat-soluble vitamin, it kind of made sense to add it to the omega-3.
Yes.
Having said that, if you go and have a test for your vitamin D levels, it's more likely that just what's in the omega-3 is not going to be enough.
Sure.
So we need to look at, say, Catalyst, which has good levels of vitamin D.
Yes.
Because just to say that we're getting some vitamin D, because it makes sense to put it with the omega, it's not enough as a source to get the vitamin D. Sure. And sorry, just on a side note, to make use of our vitamin D, we need magnesium. Having said that, people that have been tested, more than 50% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and we need the magnesium to utilize that vitamin D. So again, we can look to the Catalyst, which is a fantastic multivitamin and mineral to get our magnesium level, but obviously it's always good to test. If you can go and have a blood test and just see what your levels of vitamins are.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big questions, other questions that come up often is the whole vegans and vegetarian.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A lot of vegans and vegetarian are not happy that the source is fish because they don't use fish. And they're trying to use vegetarian options, which are like things like flaxseed oil and so on. Now, in flaxseed oil, there is what's called ALA. So it's not the form that is actually in the body. The form that is in the body is EPA and DHA.
Right.
And not only that, the levels of the EPA and DHA, the ratio that we need in our body is actually the ratio that is straight in the anchovy. That's the other reason to use the anchovy.
Yeah.
Having said that, the ALA needs to still be converted from its simple form, from the vegetarian form, to the form that our body uses. So that means that the body is still going to need to do a lot of work. And given we are so deficient in vitamin D3,
yes,
that just means that it's really a non-efficient way. So if you're not taking fish because of religious views, that's totally up to you, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if there's a way that you can still include the D3 in your diet despite your vegetarianism, that's better for health and better for our absorption.
Right. Okay. Oh, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Keeping something, and I guess too, having something in its natural form as much as possible, which is what the fish is that gives us that omegas, is a really great way for us to take that source in.
Yes and no. Yes and no, because a lot of people kind of say, oh, I'd like to get it in the more natural way. I eat fish 3 times a week. I eat my salmon. I'm sure I'm getting enough omega-3.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, there was a study done in Denmark in a fishing village. So they eat a lot of fish in the fishing village, right? So they took a group of men over the period of 5 years, so men from 90 to 95.
Wow.
And they checked their cognition level and they checked their levels of D3 in their body. So what they did, they took two groups. They took 2 groups of men. And one group, they asked them to triple their fish intake. I don't know, but in a fish
for breakfast, lunch, and tea.
I know, because in a fish village, they would already have so much fish, you would think.
Yeah.
And the other group, what they've done, they just kept their normal fish intake, but they added a D3, an omega D3 supplement, which apparently was not even as good as the omega-3 that Manatic has in their product.
Right.
Even an inferior product, when they checked that their levels were much higher, those that got the supplementation, because it's more, reliable source. It's more predictable, because with food, it can be a bit of a hit and miss. So even though they tripled their level of fish, they still didn't manage to increase their omega-3 levels compared to the group that got their supplement.
Right.
Now, other thing that is surprising, that not all fish or not all seafood has omega-3. Just because we're having fish doesn't mean you're getting omega-3, because not all fish has them. So,
Okay. So in other words, it's really best for me to take the omega-3 with vitamin D3 supplement every single day, because then I know I'm getting a reliable, pure source of exactly what my body needs.
That's exactly right. And just a preview for our next video. In our next video, when we learn about the Plus product, you will learn how important the D3 is for your hormonal system and how it helps the body makes its hormones. But that's just a preview. You'll have to watch the next video for that.
Perfect.
Do you have any other questions, Kyna? I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Great. Thank you very much, Mandakini.
Excellent. Well, thanks for all your questions. I love sharing any information about our Mandakini products.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. We hope you learned something. Bye for now.